Good morning, Year 9. As shared on Show My Homework, there was a problem with the original audio, so I'm re-recording this. So if that confused you this morning, I do apologise. Look, I've put myself on screen to publicly apologise. Okay, so we are looking at Remote Learning Lesson 8. Now, this is really a bridge lesson between the work that we did last week that accumulated and led to some beautiful examples of descriptive writing and how we're going to be moving forward. So what we're really going to focus on this lesson are the writing skills that I want to see you using in the next unit. So sometimes when we move across units, we think it's a new topic, we're learning something new, and we let go of the prior learning. We kind of forget it, we push it down somewhere else in our memory. But I want to use today's lesson to really draw attention to the skills, the writing skills that I want you to take across to the new unit. Now, to support that process, you will see that the first task is actually a quiz on Teams. So we are moving across to try and use Microsoft Teams as a much more interactive tool this time in lockdown. So there has been a quiz set for you on Teams. If you've not used Teams before, it's just to remind you that you can check your school email. You would have been sent an invitation to this quiz. Okay, it's a quick 10-question quiz that will assess your knowledge and memory so far. All right, so that's the first bit. So therefore, the rest of the lesson are a series of tasks that are going to focus us in on taking into the new unit our ability to write sentences that are controlled and creative. So from last lesson, we've identified 4 aspects of control in a sentence that we want to master, that we want to demonstrate control over. So we want to recognize that sentence control means that each sentence you have written is a complete idea. Sentence control means that each sentence has clear boundaries, with a capital letter marking the beginning of an idea and an end stop punctuation, such as a full stop, exclamation, question mark, marking the end. We want to focus on sentence controls, meaning that we have no run-on sentences, and that sentence control means using punctuation within sentences to improve fluency. We also recognize that there are ways then to be creative. So creativity and variation really work together here in our writing. So not always doing the same thing over and over. There is space for deliberate repetition that can be quite creative, but fundamentally when we write, we want to aim for creativity and variation. So this might mean using different sentence types, different sentence lengths, beginning our sentences in different ways, and using appositives within sentences. So again, we're going to do some activities today that are quite that are about mastering these skills. So this is not about this is quite using repetition to secure those skills. Okay, so practicing, putting into practice some of the skills that show evidence of control and creativity. All right, what I would just say at this point as well, guys, that before we start, there will be a series of activities. So once you've done your quiz, only work through the activities for the allotted lesson time. If you spend longer on the earlier activities and don't quite make it to the end, I don't want you working longer than your allocated hour. Okay, it's really important that you manage your time wisely and that you are making good and healthy choices. So if you get to the end of your allocated hour and you are still looking to you've still got work to do, just finish the task you're on, pause, and move on to your next learning, okay? Because it's really important that you manage your breaks and your times, isn't it, in this season? So, guys, the beginning of sentence control then is this question: what actually is a sentence? And if we're saying that sentence control is about complete ideas, we're going to do some activities today to practice our ability, to secure our ability to identify what a full sentence is, so that when we're looking at our own work, we can say, yeah, that's a complete idea, that's a complete sentence. So a full sentence needs a subject, verb, and an object. So if we look at 5 sentences or 5 non-sentences, we're going to work out which is the full sentence. So which of these has a subject, verb, and object, and which of these doesn't. So number 1, the black fluffy cat. Does it or doesn't it have a subject, verb, and object? Now, if it does, it's a complete sentence. If it doesn't, it's not. It's a non-sentence. Okay, so for each one, just list in your book 1 to 5. Hopefully as well you've included, your title and date. So we are looking at the title being Mastering Writing, and our date today is the 18th of January. So you are 18th of January, Mastering Writing 1 to 5. So the black fluffy cat, is that a full sentence or a non-sentence? You would write full sentence or non-sentence. Now, you're going to press pause here. You're going to go through 1 to 5, deciding whether they are full sentences or non-sentences. And to make that decision, you're going to look and see if you can identify a subject and a verb in each. Press pause and off you go. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look, okay, at your answers. So which of these are the full sentences? Number 1, the black fluffy cat. So although it has the subject, so who or what is the subject is our cat, and we know something about the subject, that it is black and fluffy. We don't know what the cat is doing. It is not attached to an action. It is not anchored by a verb, so it is an incomplete sentence. So we've got the black fluffy cat as a non-sentence or a fragment. It does not constitute a complete idea because it does not have that verb object subject combination. Now number 2 is a complete sentence, but why? So if you said number 2 is a complete sentence, brilliant. You just need to give yourself a thumbs up, okay, or a tick, or as I've seen the Americans doing, some snaps. So the elephant protected its calf. So who or what is the focus of this sentence? Brilliant, the elephant. So we can see the elephant here in red at the beginning of the sentence, and we ask ourselves, what did the elephant do? Brilliant, it protected. Now, what did it protect? That's going to direct us towards the object, its calf. So the elephant was the subject, protected is the verb, and it's protecting its calf. Brilliant. So in number 3, we've also got that subject, verb, object combination. She is the subject, the who or what of the sentence. What is she doing? She's hurrying to the shops. Brilliant. Now, number 4, we've got the subject but no verb, a blue table. And similarly for number 5, we've got the subject at the end of the day, but no verb or object. So we've got 1, 4, and 5 as non-examples of sentences, and we've got 2 and 3 as examples of full sentences. Brilliant. Okay, so again, just to practice this ability to identify what constitutes a full sentence, but from a different angle. So look at these non-examples of sentences. So we would call these fragments or non-example of a sentence or a non-sentence. They are not complete ideas. On my way home, into the air, waiting for his reply, loves vegetables, arrived at school, and into the clouds. So your job is to take each of those non-examples and turn them into an example of a sentence. So you might be deciding to add a verb or a noun to create the subject. So into the air. So into the air really is the object of focus. We need a subject and an action. I threw my book into the air. The cat flew into the air or jumped into the air. Cats don't fly. Waiting for his reply. She eagerly spent the day waiting for his reply. Loves vegetables. Isaac loves vegetables. Arrived at school. Children arrived at school. So you can see that we're going to take these non-examples and turn them into sentences. Now, guys, there is infinite possibility here. There are so many variations. So when we do the marking, I'll talk us through what you need to be able to identify in your own work to mark it is right. So press pause here and give yourself the time you need to do it. Okay, so as I said, there's going to be infinite variation. So as you're looking at your own to mark whether they're sentences, we want clear boundaries, capital letter, full stop. Okay, but what we want is that subject-verb combination. I am on my way home. I becomes the subject, am the verb. So I've created a complete sentence. I am on my way home. Into the air. I threw my bag into the air. So I can circle my subject, I, and my verb through. So again, if you're self-marking, you could possibly just look at your work and underline your subjects and circle your verbs to make sure they're correct. He was waiting for his reply. My dog loves vegetables. That's a truth. She loves carrots. They arrived at school. The kite escaped into the clouds. So we've got in that final one, the subject being the kite, and we've got the idea that it escaped. So just make sure that you're happy that you've turned each of the non-examples into a complete sentence. Brilliant. Okay, so it says here then, another way to master and secure sentence control, identifying and recognizing that sentences, these complete ideas. I remember we used to say a sentence makes sense, and we just used to throw that phrase into the ether, hoping it would help people to understand. But what does it mean that a sentence makes sense? We are talking about recognizing a complete, full idea within a sentence, which comes through a subject and a main verb. Okay, so we've got 5 sentences. Now it asks you here just to underline the subject and to circle the main verb. Now the main verb is connected with the subject. It tells us what the subject was doing. So as you look through these, if you're not sure if there's more than one verb, there might be, ask yourself, is that verb connected to the subject? Are they anchored together? If the subject and the verb work together, you're looking at the main verb. Now, it also says here, underline and circle. Quick disclaimer, this isn't pressure to print off this screen or to have some fancy tech where you can do it on screen. That's possible. But if you need to, you can just write into your books number 1 to 5, and you can write subject equals, main verb equals, so you can find a way to record the answers without having to copy out each sentence and doing it on the sentence, okay? So if we look at number 1 together, this could, just to show you. So Isaac shot the basketball through the hoop. So we're looking for the subject, the who or the what, and the verb, the action. What did they do? Okay, now there are patterns that we've seen in previous sentences that the subjects primarily, when we're talking about controlled sentences, are coming towards the beginning. They're in the initial position at the start of the sentence. So who or what is the focus of number 1? So you could just underline the word or write down subject equals, and the answer is subject equals Isaac. Brilliant. So then we ask ourselves, well, what was Isaac doing? That's going to give us the main verb. So what was Isaac doing? Yes, he shot the basketball through the hoop. So then comes the complement, the remainder of the sentence. Brilliant. So for number 1, subject equals Isaac, verb equals shot. Look at number 2, the snow fell all night. 3, in the Victorian era, many children lived in poverty. 4, after Oliver escaped, he had to hide. 5, broken bottles, papers and wrappers littered the ground. So we've got 5 sentences there. What are the subjects? What are the verbs? So press pause, record your answers, and we'll look together in a minute. Okay, guys, so let's look at the answers. So number 1, we said Isaac is the subject, the verb is shot. Number 2, snow is the subject, the verb is fell. So we ask ourselves, what did the snow do? What did the snow do? It fell. What fell? The snow. So you can see how the words anchor each other. They are linked together. Okay, in the Victorian era, many children lived in poverty. Now, although Victorian era is working there as a noun phrase, it's not anchored to the verb. It's the relationship between children and live that gives us the subject and the verb. So we are beginning to see that subjects can come later in the sentence. Okay, so children, what did the children do? Lived. So there's our verb. Who lived in poverty? Children. So we can use those questions just to double check. Okay, so after Oliver escaped, he had to hide. Now, what is the focus of the subject, or who is the subject, sorry, of the sentence? Oliver and he. Brilliant, because the he is replacing the noun Oliver, the pronoun. So he, what did he have to do? He had to hide. Brilliant. And we can also see that subjects can be groups of words. Bottles, paper and wrappers. What did the bottles, papers and wrappers do? They littered the ground. So littered is the verb. Brilliant. So give yourself a mark out of 5. Okay, so now we're going to move from controlling and being able to identify elements of a sentence, of a main idea, to looking at how we can create creativity, how we can move from control to creativity. So we're going to be identifying the part of the sentence that tells when it happened, and then we're going to rewrite the sentence to change the structure.
It's muted.
Hello?
I haven't been able to be hearing you.
Okay, so we're going to identify the part of the sentence that tells when it happened, and we're going to rewrite the sentence to change the structure so that when it happened is at the start. So this is about creating creativity. Okay, so yep, we can control a sentence, we can identify the subject and the verb, but now we can start to manipulate the sentence structure for creativity. So the rule we have to follow, if when it happened is at the start of the sentence, you put a comma after it. So we're going to identify the part of each sentence that tells us when it happened, and then we're going to rewrite the sentence to change the structure so that when it happened is at the start. So it sounds a little bit convoluted, but we're going to do it in stages. So 3 sentences. So let's look at number 1 together, and then you'll do 2 and 3 without me. So the rain gets very loud when it hits the roof of the tent. So we can see that this is a complete idea. Okay, it's the main subject of the sentence is the rain and the idea that it gets loud. So we're using the additional information that tells us when something happened to build detail, to create a complex idea. So we're moving from identifying a main idea in a sentence to recognizing how we begin to link and manipulate other ideas within sentences. So what is the part of this sentence that tells us then not what, but when it happened? Brilliant. When it hits the roof of the tent. So if we just put our fingers under that or underline it. So when it hits the roof of the tent. So that's the first bit. So we read the sentence and we identify the bit that tells us when. So when did the rain get very loud? When it hit the roof of the tent. Now, this is the next bit. So this is the bit you write. So then you're going to rewrite the sentence, changing the structure so that when it happened is at the start. So I'm going to capitalize my W because that's now my starting word. That's now the beginning of my sentence. So I need that boundary. When it hits the roof of the tent. Now this full stop, we're not ending the idea here because we're changing the order. This is now the beginning. This becomes a boundary marker, but it becomes a comma. So when it hits the roof of the tent, comma, the rain gets very loud. And then we're going to put in our full stop there. So for number 2, read number 2 and decide when it happened, and then rewrite the sentence so that the structure begins with when it happened, and do the same for number 3. So people applauded when the Christmas lights were turned on. Juniper the cat meowed loudly as her food was prepared. So you write out your sentences, changing the order so that when it happened is at the start. Okay, now let's see what the answers are. Aha, so good. When the Christmas lights were turned on, comma, people applauded, full stop. So you can see that the when, the Christmas lights were turned on was the when and the people applauded. So for Juniper, as her food was prepared, Juniper the cat meowed loudly. So that's also telling us when. Really important when you're marking these for technical accuracy, your capital letter and your full stop, yes, they're boundary markers, but also we've got the comma now. Now that's creating the boundary between the when and the what. So it's just giving us a pause to recognize that they are linked but separate ideas, that there is a relationship between the what and the when, but the comma is that boundary marker. Brilliant. And guys, if you're still watching this and know that I'm recording and not having the best technical life, you'll notice that my webcam down there is frozen on a very unattractive face or version of my face, but we're ignoring that and moving on to our next activity. Okay, so we've got here 5 sentences or 5 fragments. So it's that practice. So we're returning to this idea of sentence control, identifying sentences and fragments or sentences and non-sentences. So it's just a quick, you've got a minute. For numbers 1 to 5, in 1 minute, tell me, are they fragments or sentences? On your marks, get set. So you write down 1 to 5. I'm going to count you in. You've got 60 seconds beginning now. Go. So are they sentences? Are they fragments? So number 1, what do you think? Number 2, any ideas? Number 3, what do you think? Number 4, Number 5, got about 20 more seconds to make your decisions, guys. So this is quick snap. Are they sentences? Are they non-sentences? Are they got the subject, verb, and objects, or have they not got it? So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. What are the answers? Okay, so we can see that we've got our answers. Harry, a kind and resilient, talented wizard, is a fragment or a non-sentence. Brilliant. Give yourself a tick. The beach looked beautiful. Now that is a complete sentence. Subject, the beach. What did it do? It looked. Object, beautiful. Starting, or adjective, beautiful. So we've got a complete sentence. Starting to smile. Now this is a fragment. It's an incomplete idea. It does have a verb, smile, starting to smile, but it doesn't have a subject. We don't know who's doing the smiling. Now, number 4, Taffy really loved to explore the woods is a complete sentence. We've got our subject, Taffy. What does she love to do? She loved to explore the woods. Now, 5, although the spellings were really hard. Now, this is the one that might have been trickier because, yes, it has a subject, the spellings. Yes, it has a verb, were. But the subordinate conjunction, the word at the start of that sentence, although, makes it an incomplete idea because we're waiting to know, well, what? What about these hard spellings? So although the spellings were really hard, it's an incomplete idea. We need more information to make sense. Okay? So, next. Okay, so again, we're going to just do a quick countdown. Okay, identify if each of these is a sentence or a fragment. Label it S or F. For the fragments, though, this time, you're going to rewrite them as complete sentences. Okay, so when you've done this, I'm going to count you down. We're going to give you less time this time. So you write down in your books, number 1 to 5. Is it an S for sentence or an F for fragment? And then we're going to turn them into complete sentences, the ones that we need to. So, are you ready? Your 30 seconds starts now. So, number 1, the quiet voice suddenly spoke, sentence or fragment. Number 2, the crowd laughed loudly, sentence or fragment. Number 3, despite her many fears, sentence or fragment. Number 4, Isaac thought about, is that a sentence or a fragment? And number 5, encouraged her to read, is that a sentence or a fragment? So S or F's. So let's have a look together then. The quiet voice suddenly spoke. So guys, sentence or fragment? Yeah, absolutely. It's a sentence. The boy is the subject. What did he do? He spoke. So we've got a complete idea. The quiet boy suddenly spoke. So number 1 is a sentence. Give yourself a tick. Number 2, the crowd laughed loudly. So what's the crowd doing? They're laughing. There's our verb. Who's laughing? The crowd. There's our subject. So tick, complete sentence. Now, number 3, despite her many fears. Ah, yeah, brilliant. That's our first fragment. So this is the one we've got to turn into a sentence. So, despite her many fears, how can we turn that into a complete sentence? Well, we need to anchor it to a main idea. So, despite her many fears, comma, the girl still loved to go on adventures. So despite her many fears, comma, the girl still loved to go on adventures. Despite her many fears, comma, the girl faced each and every one of them. So number 3, you turn it into a complete sentence. Let's look at number 4. Isaac thought about. Now again, we've got the subject Isaac, we've got the verb thought, but this word about means we're immediately looking at an incomplete idea. What did he think about? So we need to complete that sentence. Isaac thought about basketball. Isaac thought about going to bed. So, brilliant. Now, number 5, encouraged her to read. So we do have verbs, encouraged and to read, but we don't know who's doing the encouraging. That encouraging isn't linked yet to the person doing the action, so we need a subject for number 5. So that's a fragment. How would we turn it into a sentence? Her teacher encouraged her to read. J.K. Rowling's books encouraged her to read. So you should have for number 3, 4, and 5, okay, new sentences. You've got to turn those fragments into new sentences. Off you go. Okay, so we're in territory now of fixing other people's work. Okay, for this activity, we've got to fix up this work. Now, when we looked at this on Friday, we said there's run-on sentences. The sentences that really, when we read them, we know the student could have exercised greater control. They could have fixed the run-on sentences so that there was greater control. So this is, we can see a complete beast of a run-on sentence. A girl picked flowers by the side of the road. She pulled up many different kinds of pretty flowers. She took the flowers home and put them in the vase by the window. The sun came through the window every morning. The girl took, whoa. And that's the problem with run-on sentences. You literally make the reader's thoughts run on without any control. There's no boundaries here. I'm all over the place. I don't know what I'm thinking about. There's too much information. So run-on sentences reflect sometimes the way we speak, but not the way we think. Sorry, reflect the way we think, but not how we should speak or write. Because sometimes we think like this. We have lots of ideas coming all in one go. But that's why we create speech and writing. These are two techniques by which we bring our beautiful, unruly thoughts under control. We put boundaries in place and we say, pause there a minute, brain, stop thinking, stop focusing on too much, stop trying to do too much. Let's just create moments of thought. So how do we fix these run-on sentences? We can use full stops and capital letters. We can use coordinating conjunctions. We can use subordinating conjunctions, and we can use colons maybe, or semicolons within sentences. So there's actually a huge number of ways that we can take this paragraph and bring it under control. So your job is going to pause the screen, but I don't want you to spend longer than 5 minutes on this. So give yourself a 5-minute timer and see how much control you can introduce to this paragraph. Now, as you write and think about where you want to start bringing in full stops and conjunctions and punctuation to create control, remember we still want our ideas to make sense. They still need to make sense. So a girl picked flowers by the side of the road, full stop. I could decide to make a break there. Capital letter, she pulled up many different kinds of pretty flowers. She took the flowers home. So we could say there, she pulled up many different kinds of pretty flowers and she took the flowers home. Okay, so we begin to look at how we're going to fix this paragraph so it makes sense. So your job is to give yourself 5 minutes to fix this paragraph. Okay, the final task we're just going to use today is to recap on sentence creativity, in particular positives. Positives, particularly when I talked about at the start, mastering skills that we take forward with our next unit of writing, positives, we will be using them. Even though we're not doing descriptive writing, there'll be times when I'm going to encourage you and remind you to use positives. So the first part of the task is to spot the appositive. So remember, a positive's name or rename or expand the noun, the main subject or the main noun in the sentence. So in the following sentences, can you underline or list the appositives? So what are the appositives in these sentences? Number 1, William Shakespeare, one of the greatest playwrights ever, wrote over 35 plays. Number 2, Dickens, a socialist writer, changed the world. Number 3, the Greek play Oedipus Rex, a model for later tragedies, recounts the tragic undoing of its protagonist, Oedipus. Number 4, polemics, the practice of debating, is popular in journalism. My teacher, Mrs. Doyd, works hard. So guys, press pause and give yourself the time you need to list or underline, depending on how you're doing it, your positives. Okay, so William Shakespeare wrote over 35 plays. So actually the appositive is being helped here by this boundary markers created by the commas. William Shakespeare, one of the greatest playwrights ever. So actually in this case, the appositive, one of the greatest playwrights ever, is expanding the information of William Shakespeare, which is why you can use a positive not just in descriptive writing, but more academic writing. When you do analysis, when you do commentary and recounts, you can use the positives in all types of writing to expand. Brilliant. Dickens, a socialist writer, changed the world. So again, the commas are doing a brilliant job here of helping us see the boundary between the noun and the appositive. Now it begins with an A. This one begins with 1. Remember, there are ways that appositives have to start with determiners, information that introduces it, but it renames the noun. Brilliant. Dickens, a socialist writer, changed the world. Number 3, the Greek play Oedipus Rex, a model for later tragedies, recounts the tragic undoing of its protagonist, Oedipus. So actually, appositives are a way to create concise, power-packed sentences of information. There's a load of information in this sentence. It tells us the type of play, it tells us the title of the play, it tells us a little bit about what it is. But what's the appositive? Did you find it? Here you go, a model for later tragedies. So the Greek play, Oedipus Rex, is also an appositive. So we've got a layer of appositives. The Greek play, renamed as Oedipus Rex, renamed as a model for later tragedies. So we can have a list of appositives. Okay, brilliant. Recounts the tragic undoing of its protagonist, Oedipus. So a model for later tragedies, I'll give you a tick for that one. Or Oedipus Rex, I'll give you a tick for that one. Brilliant. Polemics. So let's look at the practice. Comma, comma. In here, we've got the practice of debating. It begins with the determiner. Tick. There's our appositive. Okay, and my teacher, Miss Doidge, works hard. Now, even in the absence of commas, we can see that my teacher, Mrs. Doidge, works hard. So we've renamed the noun teacher. We've been more specific. We've actually given the teacher's particular name, Mrs. Doidge. Okay, the other quick check with the positives, if you take the appositive out, the sentence still works. My teacher works hard. And if you reverse it, if you take the noun out, it should still work. Mrs. Doidge works hard. The practice of debating is popular in journalism. Polemics is popular in journalism. Tick, it's working. The Greek play, Oedipus Rex, recounts the tragic undoing of its protagonist, Oedipus Rex. Okay, the Greek play, a model for later tragedies, recounts the tragic undoing of its protagonist, Oedipus. There we go. Brilliant. So we can check that one. A socialist writer changed the world. Dickens changed the world. Yep, William Shakespeare wrote over 35 plays. So all our checks are in place. We've spotted our positives. Now, final task of the day, of these short, like little focus mastery tasks, is this. 3 sentences. I want you to copy and complete the sentences using an appositive to add your own creative detail and to expand the noun. So the spider scurried across the floor. The teacher stood in front of the class. Tall Point is on the Rhine Peninsula. So your job is to copy each of these, beginning with, adding in the appositive. A tip to help you not get too confused is begin your appositive with either they, a, or an. So the spider, an 8-legged monster, scurried across the room. So that could just be a way to help you. Okay, guys, I hope the sound is working on this one. And thanks for those of you that let me know. That was really kind. See you tomorrow.